All right, 4:16, apologies. Let's get started with the Human Resources Committee. We've got the staffing report action items in front of us, as well as the assistant superintendent's contract and a placeholder. Let's start with the staffing items. Any thoughts, questions, observations from members? Member Harla.
Just a note that for the certified, I'll be next week recusing myself from the certified long-term sub, just for conflict of interest, seeing that my mom's name's on it. So, just a note for the record. Are you listening, or did you? Yeah, I will be recusing myself from the certified long-term sub position.
Thank you for that clarification. Member Oswald.
Yes, I was just noticing under the certified appointments, we hired another school social worker to replace someone that left. I was just curious if this person is a general education school social worker, and if not, about how many general education school social workers do we have versus those just working with special education?
This one is a district-wide, so it'd be special services, social worker. If it was hired under general ed, we'd have the site located for that. And actually, I was just handed school social work assignments. And what was the question? How many do we have?
No, the question was, do we have any general education ones, or are they all under special services?
There's not a full-time one. I believe we have some portions not working. Well, no. Check and Connect is a social worker, but it's not really doing true social work.
But those are only working with special education students.
Yeah, there's a .2 Tracy Lippman at Ordine and a 1.0 at Piedmont General Ed. So we got essentially 1.2
okay.
on the general ed side.
Thank you.
Any other staffing questions?
I have a second.
Go ahead, Member Oswald.
My second one was just a question under the certified temporary increase. On the bottom, there are two employees that are listed as 0.5 with a 1/6 overload. Can you help me understand why we give them a 1/6 overload rather than increase their FTE?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, that's pretty easy to explain, but there's more explanation on the 0.5 too. Okay, so an overload is for anybody who is already full-time. And then a 1/6 overload, what they do, it's not a true 0.2 above that, it's not a 1.2. They take their salary, divide it into 6, and they get 1/6 of that salary. So that's why it's called a 1/6 overload. What you'll see with these 0.5s, and this is something new that we added now, not all overloads are full overloads. Some of them are only for, let's say, you're doing an overload every other day. So you would not get a full overload, you'd get a half of a 1/6 overload. That's why those 0.5s are in there.
Okay, so those are really like 1/12 overloads?
No, they're 1/2 of a 1/6 overload.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Member Lefter-Kemp.
I'm sorry if I missed this question earlier, but was the 2 new kindergarten teachers that were hired at Lester Park included in here? And did I just miss not seeing it?
I saw one.
There's one for Lester on here. The other would have gone through earlier, I believe. I'm not sure we had 2 new ones, though. I'd have to go back and look. But this is the addition.
Okay.
Yes.
And, okay, great. And then secondly, on page 4, the executive, Susan Strong, executive assistant, Hawks, was that, did we replace that position?
They're interviewing for it right now.
Okay. And then my last, just kind of general question, how are we doing on like bus drivers and other staff in those positions where we tend to hire a lot at the end here?
The bus drivers, we've recently hired one, and we have a search that just closed that we're checking on references.
Okay.
But subs we're always in need of for bus drivers. Maintenance, we have a couple of custodial positions that were recently posted. Two of those are on my desk for tomorrow morning to make some offers. And we have another one that was recently posted, and I think it comes down sometime this week. Paraprofessionals, which is always our moving dominoes and moving checkers and whatever else you want to say. I think we have currently approximately 20 some odd postings that are there in various stages. Anywhere from still posted all the way through we're ready to make some offers. And we've had some internals who recently declined some offers, and so we're working on now qualifications for externals and getting some externals hired. So I think that's our biggest crunch. I do know that food service has also recently posted some positions and had no applicants for their regular positions, so we're reposting those.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Member Johnston?
Yeah, just a couple of general questions on the school bus. Also, I noticed that there's a school bus helper listed for $11.71 an hour. I'm assuming that's a non-union position?
No, if it's a non-union, it would be a sub, and it would be off of our sub rates for any of our employees. Otherwise, the maintenance contracts has specifications for a step A, so somebody that begins. And so those helpers start at level, at 1171.
Okay.
That's not a driver, that's the helper that's
right.
on the bus, yeah.
Yeah, this seems like a low rate. I assume that was a non-union thing. Surprised that the union people get paid only $11 an hour. Going back to the other one, just school bus driver transportation. This is a driver too. That's listed at $15 an hour. And that's which union is that in?
So all of the school bus drivers and helpers are within our maintenance union.
Okay, well, thank you. I had one other question down on the last of the non-certified appointments. This indicates somebody relocating, and is that too Stowe? I don't quite understand it. I know that person used to be at Laura Mack. Is that person now at Stowe?
Yep, he applied for a different position that's now out at Stowe, and he was the most senior internal, so he was awarded that position by the contract rules, and he accepted and took that position, so he's now at Stowe.
Is that the same rate that he used to get?
Yep, it's the same. If they move within the same pay group, so he was a special ed para there at Laura Mack, and so when he moved, he was also moved to a special ed para, so it's the same pay rate, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Member Harla?
I just wanted to, I was at a Head Start meeting last week. They were talking about staff that are moving around. I know that they had explained some of the para pieces, but it was exciting to hear about how there were some food service staff that had moved into paraprofessional staff. And it's something that we talk a lot about, where we want to build our workforce from within. And so just wanted to say I heard evidence of that at a committee meeting and thought it would be neat for board members to hear that. What we've heard is actually happening. So thank you.
To follow up on that, I've been experiencing the pre-K at Myers-Wilkins, and I've seen food service staff who bring in breakfast and lunch interacting with the kids and in the classroom as well. And so it's been really awesome to see the pre-K experience. It's quite phenomenal. Member Lafleur-Kemp.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. Member Johnston, when you were bringing up the helper, was that the one that was under the non-certified appointment? I just wanted to...
Which one did you answer?
The one you were just asking a question about?
School bus helper is about in the middle of the list on non-certified.
On page 3?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's $11.71 an hour.
Okay. I'll just share too. I've had a chance to have lots of conversations with particular special ed bus driver and helpers, and we have some really wonderful bus drivers, so thank you. They do great work with our kids.
Member Johnston, anything further?
The last question I asked was about on the last person on this list here. And I believe that person used to be as a community outreach person in Laura Mack. And what happened to that position? Did that position go away, and or was that position replaced with somebody else? I'm just curious what happened to the former position on Laura Mack.
So the position at Laura Mack was a special ed, building-wide position. And this particular person took a special ed building-wide at Stowe. So the person may have been doing some duties within the special education program because they're building-wide and been assigned some duties, but the person did not hold a title of some type of a community liaison or that type of a thing.
I can probably,
Okay.
that was the position before that position. He held that position while the SIG grant was in place, and then when the funding for that went away, he then moved into a para position at Mac, and now moved to Stowe in that same position.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the clarification, as I knew him as he's seen a lot of community events, and now I don't see him much anymore. That's because that grant went out, so that was along with that grant. Okay, thank you. I think we're going to miss that position in Laura Mack. I don't know how we can get that back, but it should be a good liaison to the community.
Okay, seeing no other lights on the staffing report, let's talk about the contract for the assistant superintendent. Thank you for providing this ahead of time and giving us a redlined copy so we can see the changes that were made. Anything else you would like to highlight for us?
Yeah, I have two reasons for handing that out this time. The copy I sent out on email, I had the dates beginning as of July 1st, 2017, and this is really effective July 1st, 2018. So it'll be 18, 19, 19, 20, and 2021. So those dates change. It's a similar, at this point in time, if the assistant superintendent were not to be offered a contract, there would be some other provisions that person would need to do to be ensuring employment for next year. So it's not, it might be assumed it's early, but it's not really early in the scheme of things in putting this contract forward. The increases on there, we had two things. We're increasing the life insurance from $100,000 to $200,000, and then the contract rates are 2%, 1.5%, and 1% for the 3 years.
And remind me, that mirrors the...
It does, but it's backwards. Let me explain that a little bit. It's one of the reasons that we did do that backwards. It gives a little bit more at the beginning, a little bit less at the end, but on a daily basis, when you compare principals to the assistant director, there's not a really big gap on a day worked pay. Actually, the principals technically make more per day on a per day basis. So the intent of swapping that backwards was to just put a little bit more of a gap there over that 3-year period.
Okay. Member Oswald?
Do you know how much more it will cost to double her life insurance?
Roughly at the worst, we're actually outbidding right now. It could go from a very nominal fee because it's only one person. If we looked at the other provisions that other individuals have, it's usually $1.60 per $10,000 unit, so it'd be about $1,650. I think at the max, $1,650 a month.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
The next piece on there, the approval of Minnesota minimum wage increase. Actually, as of July 1st, Minnesota will increase their minimum wage an additional 15 cents. So that would take it to $9.65. I'm sorry, in January. Did I say December? That was in my...
July.
Oh, July. That's on my head.
January.
Yeah, in January, one of the months with a J. Yeah, so in January 1st, it'll increase to $9.65 an hour. And we're working on the salary sheet, so we want to move that from the action item down to informational items, and then we'll have that salary sheet for you next month in November.
Okay. All right, so we won't be looking at it in depth this month. It'll be for November.
Correct.
Okay. Any further questions on the Human Resources Committee? Seeing no lights, I will hand it over to the Business Committee. Thank you.
All right, we'll get rolling right away. Thank you very much. Beginning with the financial reports. Tim, I think your light's still on. Thank you. Financial reports. Any updates on this piece, or do you want to give an explanation for the cash flow report resuming later this year?
They will be resuming later this year. Nothing at this time.
Okay, and that's just due to process?
Yes.
Okay, great. Next piece, approval of claims, budget revisions, wire transfers, APU projections. Are there any things you want to highlight in those areas?
Nope.
Board members, are there any questions in 1A through G at this time? All right, moving forward, there are no bids, quotes, or RFPs. No additional there. Policies and regulations. Contracts, Key Zone, YMCA. I see Tracy in the back. You're welcome to join us in case it looks like there may be some questions. Thank you for joining us today. Do you want to walk through this, please?
This is our contract with YMCA for the Key Zone program, and it is recommended that the board approve this. It covers our after-school programs at our 9 elementary school sites for the 17-18 school year, and has a cost of $815,000.
Thank you. Welcome, Jay, as well. Looks like Member Oswald has a question.
Thank you. As I was reading the contract, and I noted that in the narrative in the agenda it says about approximate cost of $815,000, but that figure is missing in the actual contract. I was curious as to why that amount isn't named in the actual contract, and if we could insert it, maybe, at to at least say not to exceed or some general figure if we don't know exactly what it is.
I think there's a reference in addendum 2.
Mr. Ressler, or maybe either or Doug, Mr. Hassler and Ressler sound very similar.
About that. There's a reference in the MOU to addendum 2, which is the project budget. And there is a line item on the budget for contract services, which equals that amount.
So
page 13.
Right. I understood that, but I didn't understand that piece to be a part of the actual agreement contract.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's legally connected or not. That's not really my job. I just know it's not in the verbiage of how much this agreement costs.
One thing that we just talked about today was that as enrollment goes up, costs go up, enrollment goes down, costs go down. So that 815 is our best guesstimate, but we also are always working towards increasing enrollment, and so then that cost is going to go up. So it is kind of a
Sure,
moving target.
We also base that amount on the budget that we spent last year as well.
Sure. So I just want to keep an eye on the budget too. So
Yeah.
and it's hard to track costs if they're not in the budget.
Thank you. Remember, thank you for pointing that out. On page 9, it says addendum projected budget. One question is, when there are changes to the budget, what is that process? What does that communication process look like?
So our Key Zone leadership team meets monthly and looks at staffing, enrollment and staffing, and that's really the big swing item. Sites also have supplies budgets, but those ranges in supplies budgets typically don't change. It's really the staffing. And that's not so much the site coordinator staffing, but the direct care staffing. So we make those decisions on a monthly basis.
Thank you very much. Member Lefler-Kemp.
This is more of a couple things. So you have on page 12 the Key Zone staffing design. Thank you for that background. 13 members will be placed. So we have 9 sites. How do you divvy up the members? I mean, is it based just on numbers or location of the current AmeriCorps members? And then I have a follow-up question. Okay.
Yeah, that is based on where the members are placed, and where the members are placed are based on the number of kids in the yellow zone.
Okay.
So that follows the need.
Okay. And then just because this came up, do we give preference, if you will, to kindergartner or first grade parents in getting into our Key Zone programs? And do we have waiting lists at every site?
We are happy to say we have no waiting lists.
Okay.
We have brought them all in.
Okay.
Sometimes there's waiting lists at the beginning of the school year because we are getting staff on board and can't adjust so quickly. But as of October 1, there are no waiting lists, and we worked hard to make sure that happened.
Okay, great, thank you. I just know, talked to a lot of kindergarten parents in the last few weeks, and they love having the program, and it's certainly a great way to get them in the door, so to speak, and know that we're going to provide well-rounded support after school as well as what we're doing during the day. So thank you for that. Really important, I think, with our kindergarten and first grade parents. So.
Just an FYI, we did make an adjustment. We had a conversation today where we will put extra staff in the office in August so that we can be more responsive to those kindergarten parents.
Thank you. I'm impressed by you continually being a responsive partner. It's a good relationship that we have between the Y and the Duluth schools, and it's continued to grow over the years, so thank you for your leadership on that, Tracy. Member Sandstead.
I had a clarification. You mentioned depending on the number of kids in the yellow zone, and I'm wondering if you can explain what the yellow zone is.
I could, but Superintendent Gronseth would be a much better person to explain that.
We've talked a lot about having a multi-tiered system of support and how we look at individual student data, and talked about that pyramid. So the bottom of the pyramid being the green zone, the middle being the yellow zone, the top being the red zone. And so the work of Key Zone and our grants that surround Key Zone are focused on really supporting kids who are in the yellow zone, and so need some extra support.
Thank you. Member Welty.
Yes, somebody mentioned the growth. I'm wondering if somebody could give me just a rough history of the growth of Key Zone through the years, if anybody has that information locked away in their head.
I'm wondering, I think we've had a number of presentations. Do you have that from, I think we've had it, every year for the last 3 years? I bet you've got it somewhere in your head.
Yeah, Bill's got his light on there.
Superintendent, or Jay?
I know prior to our partnership with the YMCA and receiving the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant, when we were a school-age care program, we were around 600 students that participated in the program. And I know our numbers from last year were hovering around 1,000 students served during the school year and about 450 during the summer. So that's where we're at today.
Can you have me when the YW began working with you?
The YM?
Oh, YM.
When they began?
Yeah.
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And actually, before then,
yes.
because they were different programs, Key Zone started 5 years ago. However, we had it was Kid Zone. Schools Out.
Schools Out.
We had Schools Out. We had Kid Zone. We
Compass.
had Compass. There were several different programs, and so I know when I was principal up at Homecroft, the Y partnered to run the after-school programs because we didn't have other programs out there. So it was the 21st Century Grant is the opportunity we had to bring all of those programs together, talking about Excel and Kid Zone and the WISE programming, all coming together. So it's a long partnership. So, and I like to think that the very best pieces of each of those programs came together to build Key Zone.
Great. Member Leffler-Kemp.
Yeah, I will second that. I was trying to do the quick math, and I know 18 years ago, my oldest daughter was at Schools Out, and I was involved with the Parent Advisory Committee as a PTA liaison as well as a parent, and that was exciting at that time when it was that program and all the different ways the Y worked with our schools and our parents. So my follow-up question, though, so if I heard you right, Jay, you said 1,000 students last year, about 450 this summer, and so right now the enrollment is district-wide about 1,000 students?
894.
Okay, great, thank you. I did want that specific number. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Welty.
Was that 600 figure from 5 years ago that had Schools Out and Kid Zone, was that all of the programs after school, or was that just Kid Zone?
Yeah, that was actually Kid Connection.
Kid Connection.
Yeah, it was only that program.
What a complicated history. Thank you.
Mr. Hassler, any other comments? No? Great. All right, thank you very much. Seeing no further lights, we'll move on to the next part. Appreciate you coming in today. Both of you.
Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank
You, Tracy and Jay. Next piece, Doug, if you could talk through the change 4A, 4B.
This item is a change order specific to the playground work that was done at the Stowe Elementary School. We've talked a lot about playgrounds in recent months, and this project was different than the others from the standpoint that this was a site where the playground was due for replacement, and it had been provided for in our LTFM plan, and so that work has now effectively been completed. The change order that you have before you represents in total a net reduction to our cost of about $830. I talked to Dave Spooner today about the various items that flow into this change order. There's a list here that includes some additional excavation and sodding and topsoil work that was done, the use of a different diameter pipe than what had originally been intended or planned, enlarging a gate opening, removing a retaining wall from what had previously been planned, concrete ramp adjustments, and a decision to back off of the benches that had originally been planned for the project, and netting out again to a net reduction of about $830. I'd be happy to address any questions you might have concerning this.
Member Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to see it's almost getting done. Been lots of interest in it, of course. Still is moving or not Stowe, but the Gary Community Center there has been doing so many things there, and had a lot of questions. Now, since it's done, I don't know if Superintendent, if you can share, we had that question. A lot of the people in Gary have indicated that they're concerned about, of course, the lock on the gate on the school side, and I know we've had that discussion, and I know you indicated that once we get it all done now, that lock will be coming off. Did I understand that correctly? I'm hoping I did, but anyway, could you explain a little bit more about that, please?
Superintendent?
Sure. I had conversations with Principal Glockley, who is going to make sure that it wasn't locked, or that we made arrangements for the rec center staff to maybe lock it after hours if it needed to be locked. I know when we spoke, I did look into it right away, and it was because the playground wasn't finished yet, and that's why it was still locked at that time. Because they still had to put some more finishing touches on. I know the sod wasn't in, and a few other things weren't done then. So I haven't followed up since that conversation, but I'm assuming that they've made arrangements for it to be open to the community.
Thanks. All right. Thank you for that update. The next, we will move on to B2 for change order RFP. It's seeing that we need to move, we're looking at moving this to November. Could you give a brief update on why that'll move?
I'd be happy to. Certainly there was significant discussion on that proposed change order last month. And I know an information item that was of great interest to a number of the board was the final tally on what our change order would be for the contractor's work. Just to go back a little, not too far, this proposed change order has to do with work that was done by the landscape architect. But as a result of that work, there was going to be less poured-in-place rubber compound used on a number of playgrounds throughout the school district, and that was going to be netting out to a cost reduction for us. Given that the board, I think, very expressly stated that you were very interested in seeing what those final cost reductions were. Work has continued on the playgrounds, and we do not yet have that change order for the contractor, which is A+ Landscaping, yet, but we will have that in time for November. And since you had an interest in both the SAS change order and the A+ change order, we thought the best thing to do would be to come back in November when we will have both of those available to you.
Thank you. That makes sense to have it pulled together in one discussion versus addressing questions with unknowns on either end. Member Johnston?
Sure. There is some things I would like to talk about. We had a lot of discussion at the last meeting, and I think there's some follow-up things that I have concerns about as a result of that discussion. I'll just kind of go through. I got 4 items. One was I thought when we asked for the rebidding that there was a change going to be in the contract that we were not going to specify tamarack engineered wood fiber. And I noticed in the final contract that verbiage was still in there, and in fact the contract verbiage seemed to be identical to what was originally let out. And so I had a question on why the tamarack verbiage was still in the contract. And one of the issues I recall having a discussion on that was going to make it more difficult for people to bid on it. And I recall the discussion we had anyway here a couple of months ago that the contract was going to be loosened up to be able to allow more freedom in bidding, and that didn't seem to happen. And the tamarack is one of those issues that...
I don't have any information on that tonight, but I'd be happy to follow up with that.
Yeah, sure. That's kind of why I want to give you these things kind of a heads up now rather than waiting till there. One of the there's one other question on that was, I've been hearing from the community. Again, we just like to pass on rumors, good, bad, or ugly, and hope that to get them nipped in the bud. But there has been a concern out there that that the engineered wood fiber did not meet contract specifications, and that and it is not ADA accessible, wasn't installed appropriate to meet the ADA ASTM standards. And so that's just one, if you could check on that. I can certainly give you more details of what I've heard on that afterwards if you would like.
Your third question?
I got two other questions. One, I'll just go kind of quick. When we had that discussion, I didn't say anything after we started the discussion, but I just want to say that now again, kind of, you can maybe address that come next month. I thought there was a lot of confusion given by the administration between the general contract, which is A+ engineering changes, and the SAS, which is the design engineer. And hearing a lot of that discussion, I thought that there seemed to be confusion there. And I'll just want to read part of the things on the SAS contract from, I believe it was February. And this reading their contract, SAS Associates proposes to contract with the licensed surveying company to survey existing playground equipment, surveys for drainage, curbs, elevation, other relevant site details needed for the completion of construction documents. Then it goes on, it says SAS will develop complete construction document plans and specifications for industry standards for bidding and construction. And once detailed site analysis and design investigations are completed, SAS will utilize as-built drawings and the survey information to produce construction plans, including existing conditions, removal plan, grading plan, site and layout plan, landscape and restoration plans, and associated details. So the concern that I started to mention at the meeting yesterday was, and I hadn't read this contract now, but when I do read the SAS contract, a lot of the concerns that you brought up, that there was significant changes, were, I think, exactly covered in this SAS contract. They were contracted to provide the construction documents, including hiring a registered land surveyor to do that survey. And so it just seemed like the justification, again, why we should be paying SAS just seemed to be very weak. And whether or not there was changes, that the second point is that involves the general contract changes, which you talked about. Let's hope we have some sweet savings on there, but not the SAS contract. So I just wanted to bring up the difference between those two contracts and suggesting that the administration reread the SAS contract. And I did want to say real comments were made from the administration that we're not paying people, that we're not doing this in good faith. Those really concern me because we are, of course, we're paying people. I'm assuming we've been paying our people. I hope we are. And when there's a proposed contract change that has to be approved, in this case by the board, and to make statements like we're not paying people, I think was really out of line. And I hope that the administration does a little bit better looking at the contracts and how we administer contracts, and not be saying things like we don't pay people. That's completely false when it comes to contract administration at this point.
Member Johnston, your 4 comments are noted. If administration could please follow up on those. I'd say with regard to number 4, there was a lot of discussion that happened quickly at that board meeting last month, so if board members could please, in advance of next month, review that discussion from last time if you have questions or concerns. I know that staff are tracking that we are paying our bills, and I think part of it is ensuring that if someone is going over that, that's why it comes to us. So it's working with them in that way. So, Member Sandstead.
I was just wondering, I saw some work happening at Myers-Wilkins this morning on the playground, and I'm wondering if we're still on track for finishing next week.
I hate to say that's kind of a loaded question because of the weather. The target completion date was October 15th. With the large amount of rain that we've had in recent weeks and months, I don't know that target will be met exactly. Dave Spinner would probably have a better handle on that than I do. We are anticipating projects will be completed in the current month, but in terms of that exact date, that may have drifted back a little bit because of the rain that we've had recently.
Thank you. Member Welty?
Yeah, I can, before I could proceed, I can certainly testify to the impact of rain on construction, because the intersection by my house is taking forever to get completed because they've had, I don't know how many rain days that slowed them down. So that's just our bad luck where the playground fix-up are concerned. I do have, I guess, something that I would be interested in getting some information on at some point in the future. Of course, we were sort of told that we should take care of this in September, and we tabled this till October, and now I find it ironic that the administration is saying November would be a better time for us to have all the apples in a row, all the ducks in a row, and talk about it. That's fine with me. But I will say that among the bits and pieces of information that have found their way to me, or at least a rumor, is one in which somebody who wanted to bid on this $1 million project that was a little more expensive than we had hoped it would be, seems to be suggesting that they were misdirected and didn't get a chance to do it, and they apparently had an attorney fishing around up here to find out what was going on. I'm not sure who potential target of any legal complaint they might bring would be, whether that would be the district or the contractors who have helped us put this into place. But I would be interested in getting some information about that if the administration has any details they could fill in.
Thank you.
I don't have any details at this time. I'm not sure what the contractor is that you're talking about, so if you can give me some more information about it. Our hope in all of our bidding procedures is that we get the maximum number of bidders on our projects, because we think that is obviously most conducive to us getting the best pricing for the work to be done. Not knowing what contractor you're referring to, I don't have any information on that, but if you could give me more specific information, I'd be happy to follow up on it.
I'll see if I can't do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Oswald?
I just wanted to comment on Member Sandsted's question. As thank you for sending me the contract for the bid package for the playgrounds. But in my reading it, that I'm very thankful that our construction company or our contractor is so willing to finish by October 15th, and I know they're doing their darndest. But I just wanted to mention that there's no penalty for them if they don't finish by October 15th in the contract, so, in the bid document in the contract. So I just wanted you to be aware that it's a highlighted red $0 if it goes beyond October 15th.
All right, seeing no further lights, we'll move on. There are no other change orders for any update on the lease with the Hills, formerly known as Woodland Hills lease. Or is this it'll be in the future?
We're still working on that.
Okay, thank you. Resolution acceptance of donations. A note for detail, it still has the X's on this for next month, so just to make sure that resolution numbers get added next month for next week's. Any questions on acceptance of donations? All right, transition to paperless board book process using board book. On page 22, there is a resolution for the board's consideration. So, I know there was a significant amount of discussion last month. Member Oswald.
Thank you, Chair Harla. In thinking about this and knowing that I am tech savvy and I will probably enjoy a Chromebook without a problem, and that transition is just fine. I do, however, when I have a paper packet, find myself flipping back and forth to the very beginning a lot to see where I am. And so my question is more of a process thing, that would it be possible for board members to get just a copy of the front agenda part in paper, like in our red folders at the time of a meeting, so that we have that to reference, so I'm not ruining my scrolling finger on my mouse, going up and down all the time to look for it. It just seems to be something that's, I mean, and if we get used to it, we get used to it, but right away that would make me feel a lot more comfortable, you know, when I'm trying to navigate.
I can say that I reference back and forth too, and it doesn't. You don't have to scroll with your finger. It's just a click of the button, and it goes to that page that you want. So that might be a solution, but we do have agendas that we create for the meeting, but
and that will continue then, in that form for the general public at meetings.
I think we have to provide at least one, but it wouldn't be the whole.
Right, I understand. I would just really hope that we're not going to go backwards in transparency for the people that show up. I don't want them all to have to hover around the single copy. I think that's a user-friendly expense for the people that show up. But that's just one board member's
and that's
opinion.
never been the whole backup packet anyway. So.
And I would say that those pieces can be decided on in January for making sure to print those pieces out. But that's a good question, Member Oswald. Member Johnston?
Sure, I was the one that was fairly vocal about this last month, and I will continue to be very vocal about it, that I'm strongly opposed to this. Not because I'm not tech savvy, I'm very tech savvy. I don't want this because I've been looking around. Everybody has more than one document sitting on their desk in front of us. And you can't have more than one document sitting on a desk in front of you when you have a screen that is, I believe, 8 inches by 10 inches, if I recall the size of the Chromebook. And so, first of all, I don't think it's amenable to doing research or thinking about what we're going to be talking about. It's not because I'm not tech savvy, I'm extremely tech savvy. Is that sometimes I want to have a piece of paper, sometimes I want to have 3 pieces of paper in front of me. And I think most of our desks probably still have paper on them, and I think that should continue. There's some logistical questions that I have about that as well. The cost savings, which I brought up last month, was principally, there was some paper cost savings, but it was principally personnel cost savings. I made the point that if we don't do this, that I don't think the intent is to take away that person's job or reduce her pay by, say, $5,000 per year. I don't think, I'm hoping that was not the intent. So the cost savings is minuscule, if at all. And if there's any cost savings that would be gained by not having a person work for us in the board, that would be taken up probably by the superintendent. And I think as a board, we have no staff as it is. We are virtually volunteer people. And to cut off any kind of help that we have now, I think is really not acceptable. If we go, so we're not going to have any cost savings on personnel, 0. And what savings there is going to be taken away from our support staff, the school board support staff. The cost savings, if there is cost savings on paper, I believe that was about maybe 5,000 estimated at cost savings. Certainly, I think that I asked when we talked about this a long time ago, we don't need to have 2 sets of documents sent to us, one for the committee meetings and one for the general meetings. That could be one document. That would cut that cost savings from $5,000 down to $2,500 right there. I think that in $2,500, even $5,000, even $10,000 is what they call in Washington dust on the decimal place. And I'd see no benefit for the school board members at all. I see a negative benefit for the school board. And for that reason, I'm asking for the rest of the board here to oppose this, because will give us absolutely nothing. There's also a point about policies, and I've neglected to look up the policies, but there is policies that say we must be given hard copies given to us. I believe 3 days we must be received 3 days in advance, and I'm sure that could be certainly changed. Of course, we set the policies, we can change the policies, but before we start mandating by January 1st, 2008, we must convert everything to Chromebooks. We have to look at our policies and get those policies so they would be congruent. And at this point, they're not, and nobody's even mentioned that. For those reasons, I don't think that this would be a benefit for us at all to do this. I think that it's going to reduce our transparency, which we already have severe issues with. And another thing that concerned me, we talked about a little bit. We asked, well, could we have a break-in period, or could we maybe get some training on the stuff before we do this? And the answer was an adamant no. And by doing this on January 1st, we obviously don't have time to do that. And we also asked whether or not there could be exceptions made that somebody could get something if they so desired. The answer, again, by the administration was an adamant no. So for those last two reasons in itself, I'm hoping that the board will not go along with this, because it will serve the school board not at all. There will be no benefit that I can conceive at all for this, and so I'm asking this board here not to pursue this. And I was surprised that we didn't talk about it in the main meeting last month, and I thought that was going to have a timely death, and now here it is back again. I'm somewhat surprised that it came up again without even being mentioned at the full meeting last month.
One of the great pieces is that we are an educational institution, and we'll be surrounded by educators that I remember hearing presentations that board members will have an opportunity to be trained in on this. And I'm asking administration, should board members need reasonable accommodation, will staff members be willing to work alongside them, as well as board members that will be continuing to serve? Will they?
Training would definitely be part of it, and I continue to ask for some support when I'm not sure how to do something on here as well. So I'm still learning too.
Thank you. Member Leffler-Kemp.
Yeah, I clearly understood that training would be a part of it, and I know that was a question I've asked as we've had these discussions for a couple of years. Couple other questions. How much money did you say again we would be saving? I just want to make sure I have the right dollar amount. About?
Looking at last month's report, because it came up at a click of a button, $10,284.
Okay, and then my second, let's see, I mentioned that. How many other districts? I certainly know when I've been out doing trainings and stuff, that is something I've been asking folks about, who uses Chromebooks, who doesn't, what do you like about it, what do you don't. But did we ever get a number of how many districts in Minnesota have gone this route, and or do we have a sense of that?
I know that Melinda had taken a census of other districts. She sent out a message through her organization, and I believe the last I heard there was 25 that responded, and I believe it was 2 or 3 of those districts that printed paper, and we were one of them.
Okay.
Chair Kirby, I'm just going to actually call on Chair Kirby. I remember you saying you had an opportunity to reach out to some other districts of a similar size in their boards. That might provide some more context to Member Leffler-Kemp's question.
I don't have it with me here. I contacted 5 other districts: Minneapolis, St. Paul, Anoka, Hennepin. They were big ones. Moorhead and St. Cloud. 4 of the 5 used Chromebooks or their personal computers. they have for the past 5 years and said they wouldn't go back to paper. One of them was still using some paper and said they were trying to get away from that. But that's, I don't have that, but that's the gist of what I found.
Thanks for the data. Member Welty.
On that last point, I'd be curious to know if was it school board members who said that, or was it the administration that said that about those 5 districts?
I contacted the IT person and the executive in the superintendent's office and one school board executive assistant.
Okay. In thinking about this, the issue that probably is the most important is the issue of transparency. As I've heard this discussion proceeding here, Member Johnston talks about the rather modest savings, $10,000 in staff time. This is where we will be heading at some point in the future, and since Member Johnston is so much younger than I am, he can appreciate my decrepitude and my unwillingness to learn new tricks. But I do see this as the wave of the future. It does occur to me that if all of the documentation showed up in a Chromebook, there's no particular reason why it shouldn't be available so that anybody bringing a computer into the building wouldn't be able to follow along on a computer. And I guess as we are reviewing this, I would be far more agreeable with this transition that I personally am dreading if I knew that anybody who brought their laptop or even their cell phone would be able to access all of this information. And if that was the case, I really could not in good conscience object to gravitating toward the Chromebook. So I will be interested in hearing in the future what the administration says about being able to put that information out on the internet in advance of our meetings for the public.
Superintendent.
We already have. It's already goes to board book, so people have been able to do that for as long as we've had board book. Yeah, you can go on and see the agenda.
The general public.
Yeah.
Yes. Member Sandstead.
Yes, there's whenever we get the links from Melinda, it says, do you want to go to the public or do you want to do the private board book site? That's the only reason I know that there is public, but it is out there. I just wanted to put in my thoughts on this, that I would not consider myself tech savvy, and I am a little apprehensive, but I know this is the right way to go, and so I'm looking forward to it. And I tend to forget my paper at home anyway, and so to prevent my double printing habit, I'm looking forward to the switch to Chromebook, and I will appreciate some training, I'm sure, that will come along with it. So I'm on board.
Member Johnston?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there have been many instances I've tried to find agenda items and documents on board book, and they aren't there. Now, will we do a better job? I'm sure we will, but there's other instances. For example, handouts that we got here today. I guess we will get how many copies of these going to have, since I do many documents of many types at home for my work. We have version 1, version 2, I'm up to version 10 on some of my documents, and I've got PDFs, I've got Word documents, I've got CAD documents. This is not a simple process when you have complex documents or multiple documents that we work with. And how that is all going to work. Yeah, I make it work at home, but it's frequently people get the wrong version, and we're all arguing on conference calls about I asked, what version are you having? And they say version 4, and I said, well, there's a version 5, and they said, no, you didn't. The last one was a version 4, and so send me the version 4, and it turns out I've enabled the wrong one. This is stuff that people work with documents all the time, like myself have, and it is an issue which is not insignificant.
Member Oswald?
I have the contrary experience to Member Johnston. As long as you log into the private side, every document is there. And so I'm addressing Member Welty in this, in that the public does not get what we get. And that's never going to change. They're never going to see the copies of the contracts and all the other little things that we get. So if Member Johnson is going to the public side, he's not going to find what he's looking for. I'm never there when it is, but I do know that I search it often in the little search box and usually find what I need right away.
Thank you for your clarification. Member Welty?
On that point about contracts and what's not viewable to the general public, I believe the contracts are public information, are they not? At least once they are approved by the school board. Is there any particularly good reason why once a meeting has been completed, we would not make that information available to anybody wanting to look at it?
Superintendent?
I kind of have a recommendation. If you go to Board Book and hit that quick view, for instance, I just went to it and I can see all of the contracts here that the public would have access to. And so I think if you go in, you'll see which items are private view and which are public view. I think that'll be helpful.
Yeah. This may be helpful if we're talking about this for members to spend time this week in advance of next week looking around, and if you have follow-up questions, please follow up with administration on this, and we can discuss more next week. Member Johnston, a brief comment, and then we're going to move on to the next portion.
Yeah, just on, yes, we all know we have two layers of the board book. And last I heard that when management reviews access to it, which is a problem in itself because management has access to everything that we do on the computers. But in this case, virtually no board members were using the board side of the board book. And so that has always been an ongoing issue. So I'm not the only one that did not use the inner sanctum of the board book.
We are going to move on to the placeholders with regard to sale for bonds.
If I could address those yes. all together, as you'll see as you look over those, there are two sets there. The first set has to do with a placeholder to extend the sale date for the bonds. The second set has to do with a resolution that would be approved upon the issuance or sale of those bonds. We are still in the process of finalizing the sale date. I believe it will occur before the end of the month, and therefore it would not be necessary to extend the sale date. If we get new information prior to the next board meeting that suggests that we will not be able to accomplish that sale by the end of October, we would come back with a resolution to extend the sale date into November, hoping that that's not necessary. As to the other two resolutions, those resolutions will only be appropriate after the sale has occurred. So I don't have any reasonable expectation that sale will occur between now and the scheduled board meeting. So don't plan on those resolutions being on that agenda, but at some point in time, resolutions to that effect will be necessary.
Thank you for the update. Member Sandstead.
Just clarification, do they have to happen within a certain amount of time after the sale? Will we have a special meeting after the sale, or could they go on November's calendar if needed?
That's a good question. I don't know. It may be necessary to conduct a special board meeting. I will check with legal counsel to confirm the timing of that.
Thank you. Seeing no further lights, onto informational expenditure. Any updates on sale of property?
No.
All right. Informational expenditure contracts, revenue contracts, no cost. Start with expenditure contracts. Any questions? See one from Member Oswald.
I've already had previous conversations about a couple items. Number one, that the child care program is go right ahead.
The child care program?
I was reading child and adult care food program.
Yes, that's a revenue contract. So that's on the wrong list. So that will shift over to the revenue contract in the board packet that you will have for the board meeting. Good catch.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Gold star of the day.
And now let's see what else you've come up with, because I've got two more.
Those are those ones that I actually came up with.
We could hear from Mr. Hassler maybe to clarify. Go ahead.
We have two contracts, I believe, appearing on pages 52 and 55 that reference the incorrect date of service. They reference 2016 instead of 2017. Those will also be corrected for the final board packet.
So 3
that's all I
gold
have.
stars of the day, just saying.
What's that?
3 gold stars for the day.
Excellent.
Just saying. I do actually have a question, though.
Okay.
Member Oswald, your question.
On page 41, on the concurrent enrollment agreement between the College of St. Scholastica and Duluth Public Schools for the course of Introduction to Teaching, I am assuming, and please correct me.
Page number, please.
Oh, it's page 41.
Thank you.
That this is the course that will be the basis for Pathways to Teaching. And my question is it says that it'll be good for 2018-19 and 2019-20, so why are we paying it for out of this year's budget?
Superintendent?
I don't see where it's out of this year's budget, sorry.
Well, we are passing it now, but it's not going to happen until next school year. So I was assuming the cost we were paying now, that it was $4,600. Or is that just a projected cost that we don't have to pay yet since it's
Member
an
Sansa, did you see a
expenditure?
note?
It looks like the cost is going to be per student, so I
Yeah.
imagine until we have the number of students, we won't know what the total cost is. And we won't be paying until we have the students enrolled. Is that accurate?
Yes, and that's the same cost that we pay for other students who are taking CITS courses.
Sure.
So that's why I was...
And just so a follow-up question is, if this is the basis for the Pathways to Teaching courses, and the student qualifications listed on the bottom of page 41 don't limit who can take that course, is there going to be a limit on who can take it? Is there going to be a priority given? Is it just open to anyone, and when it fills up, it's done? What's your thoughts on that?
We will be encouraging students of color to be taking this course. There aren't the same limitations that are set by state university systems as far as GPAs and such, which makes College St. Scholastica one of our preferred partners for this. This is the first CITS course that they are offering, and so we're happy that they're coming on board with us.
Thank you. Member Leffler-Kemp.
I just had a question, and I'm just double checking if I missed this here, but on the staff training at East, there were 3 different professional development sessions. Did I miss the paperwork that went with what those sessions were about?
Which page, Member Leffler-Kemp?
Well, I'm on page 23, the expenditure contracts, and it's the 3 professional development sessions at East High School, and I was just curious what oh wait, okay, here we go here.
No.
Just trying to understand what the training was going to be.
I think we're looking at,
56.
are you looking at the contract? Are you
Yeah.
looking for the contracts? I think one of them appears on page 49.
Yeah, and
And I believe the next 2 subsequent to that, which had the erroneous date, also are referencing that professional development activity.
And do you know what the development activity is, was really my question. I'm sorry I didn't ask it clearer.
Superintendent?
I know that they were on the topic of engagement. So student engagement and how that might look in the classroom, and so strategies that teachers might be using. And so those were the opening day at East as part of their training.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Seeing no further lights on expenditure contracts, any questions on revenue contracts? Seeing no further lights, we'll move forward to no cost contracts. Any questions on no cost contracts? Seeing no further lights, no change order signed, facilities management capital status report, and our thoughts and condolences are with our staff member, and just understand that piece. So there's grace as well, as we're all humans. Then moving forward for future items, members will see that. Are there any questions on future items? Seeing no lights, our meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening.